I was actually expecting V5 to drop sometime next week, and then suddenly, it just came out of nowhere. On top of that, we even got the live stream. I was really hoping things would be different this time, that V5 would finally bring some big, meaningful changes. But honestly, after what happened with Ceredra V5 and Cyrene V5, I should have known better. Those big changes I was hoping for, yeah, they never came. And somehow, I still fell into the same trap again. But after sitting on V5 for a while and really thinking it through, I finally reached what I'd call my post-V5 clarity. Now I feel ready to talk about it, as objectively as I can, even if I'm still a bit biased. So, what are we waiting for? Let's break this down, one by one. Before we dive into everything, let's first put things into perspective. There really isn't much difference going from V3 to V4 and then to V5. Most of the changes are just wording adjustments, so realistically, V3 already feels very close to the final version. Because of that, I don't think it's very interesting to go through every single V5 change one by one. It would honestly just be boring, since there's barely anything meaningful to break down. So instead, I'm going to approach this differently. Rather than focusing on minor changes, I want to talk about where these characters will actually stand in the meta once they are released. I'll go through them one by one, starting with Silverwolf, then moving on to Elation MC, and finally Evanescia. And just to be clear, everything I say will be from a zero-cycle perspective. I'm not going to consider whether a character is free or not. If the kit is bad, then it's bad. No sugarcoating. So from V3 to V5, the most notable change I see for Silverwolf is in her talent numbers. Previously in V3, for every hidden MMR point, she gains 0.3% crit rate, and any excess crit rate beyond 100% would be converted into crit damage at 0.6% per point. Now in V5, those numbers have been increased to 0.4% crit rate and 0.8% crit damage per hidden MMR point. So what does this actually mean in practice? When you combine this with the fact that Silverwolf gains 20 hidden MMR from her talent and another 20 from her signature, she will consistently have 40 hidden MMR when entering her ultimate state. That translates to 16% crit rate right off the bat. Previously, this was only 12%, so now it's a noticeable improvement. Because of that, your required crit rate from relics drops from around 88% down to 84% to reach a perfect 100%. It's not a massive change, but it's definitely helpful, especially since you also need to heavily invest into speed. And speaking of speed, her trace also got adjusted. Before, you only needed 150 speed to activate the bonus for 30% elation. Now, it requires 160 speed, but in return, you get 50% elation. The scaling at higher speed remains the same, but this change clearly pushes you even more toward building high speed. Just like I said in my previous video, 200 speed is basically the standard for Silverwolf now. So overall, with these changes, Silverwolf is starting to look much more solid in the meta going forward. Yes, she still has the limitations I mentioned before, but it feels like Hoyoverse has already decided to address those issues through future supports rather than directly changing her kit. And because of that, I actually have pretty high expectations for her moving forward. At this point, I'd say Silverwolf is definitely a solid unit, and on release, she absolutely deserves to be considered tier 0 with all the reasons I already mentioned. Now, let's talk about Elation MC. Sigh. Alright, I'll admit, I did make a mistake regarding Elation MC's E6 earlier. I definitely misunderstood that part. But even with that correction, my overall opinion about Elation MC's kit hasn't really changed. From V3 to V4, and finally to V5, the most notable change is indeed in E6. Instead of giving 12% speed to a targeted ally, it now goes full selfish mode, granting 100% critical damage to Elation MC when using their Elation skill. And when you combine this with their trace, which also only boosts their own Elation damage, it becomes very clear that Elation MC is now leaning much more toward a DPS role rather than a sub-DPS or support. Yes, there is still some buffing capability, but compared to Harmony MC and Remembrance MC, the difference is just too obvious. Most of Elation MC's support value comes from their ultimate, and even then, it's single target and only copies an Elation skill once. Now, could they still receive buffs in the future? Sure, it's possible. We've seen something similar happen with Remembrance NC back in earlier versions, but if I remember correctly, those buffs mainly improved their damage, not their support capabilities. So while it's not impossible for Elation MC to get better support utility later on, I honestly doubt it, especially when we know that a future replacement is very likely coming anyway. In terms of team usage, if you're playing Silverwolf and you already have Yao Guang, I really don't see a strong reason to run Elation MC, unless you don't have Sparksy. Because for Silverwolf teams, having at least 3 Elation units is important to consistently trigger 2 AHA instants per cycle. That said, there is one area where Elation MC actually shines, and that's with Evanescia. Right now, Elation MC is considered her best-in-slot partner, even over Yao Guang, and the reason comes down to one key mechanic: certified banger generation. Elation MC's skill generates certified banger points, not punchline, and Evanescia specifically benefits from that. She even gains energy from certified banger, not punchline. Since the only other sources of certified banger are tied to AHA impact or Yao Guang's ultimate triggering AHA, Elation MC becomes extremely valuable for enabling Evanescia's gameplay, and that's honestly a big deal. But even with all that, I still don't like Elation MC. It just doesn't feel special. Not when you compare it to the identity and impact of Harmony MC or Remembrance MC. That said, I do have to be fair. If you're playing Evanescia, you do need Elation MC right now. And for Silverwolf teams, if you don't have Sparksy or Yao Guang, Elation MC can act as a decent replacement, although the hidden MMR generation will be slower, since certified banger doesn't directly translate into punchline generation. So where does that leave Elation MC in the meta? Definitely not tier 0 in my opinion. Even though some tier lists, you know, the ones that rhyme with wedding, might put them there just because they're a free E6 unit. For me, Elation MC sits around tier 0.5 for their comparison to Harmony MC and Remembrance MC. A good unit, but nowhere near top tier. Now let's talk about Evanescia, the one I didn't properly cover back in V3. She's actually gone through quite a lot. From V1 to V3, she received nerfs after nerfs, and by the time we reached V3, her core design was already toned down significantly. From V3 to V5, though, the changes are mostly about Eidolon reshuffling. Some effects that were originally in E1 got moved to E2 and so on. One notable improvement is that her E1 now gives 20% all-type res pen, which is definitely a solid upgrade. But at her core, Evanescia is still an ultimate dependent unit. That means she needs a lot of energy to function properly. Thankfully, her kit does help with that. Her light cone provides energy regeneration, and it scales even further if her energy goes beyond 100%. And yes, just like Saber, Evanescia can store up to 200% ultimate energy, which is a big deal for her consistency. On top of that, her talent allows her to gain energy whenever she receives certified banger points. And this is where things get a bit confusing for some people. The difference between punchline points and certified banger points. Punchline points are generated normally when Elation characters use their actions, and these are stored in AHA. When AHA instant is triggered, those punchline points are converted into certified banger points and distributed to your team. So in most cases, the only way to gain certified banger points is by triggering AHA instant. However, Elation MC breaks this rule. Instead of generating punchline, Elation MC directly generates certified banger points through their skill. And because Evanescia gains energy from certified banger, this makes Elation MC her best battery option right now. One thing I still find interesting is that Hoyoverse put a cap on how much energy she can gain per instance, limited to 100. It almost feels like they're hinting at a future support that will generate even more certified banger points. So overall, Evanescia is definitely a solid unit, with strong potential to improve as more characters tailored to her playstyle are released. I'd say she's on a similar level to Silverwolf, although her setup is more complex if you want to fully maximize her potential. Right now, her strongest setup seems to be a sustainless variant, but that could easily change if we get an Elation sustain unit in the future. At the moment, she reminds me a lot of how Anaxa compared to Castoris, strong, but requiring the right conditions to truly shine. But even with that in mind, I'd still say Evanescia is absolutely tier 0 worthy at release, with all reasons I mentioned above. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with how Silverwolf ended up. She definitely feels like a much more complete unit compared to her V1 version. Yes, she still has some limitations, but at this point, it's pretty clear that Hoyoverse plans to address those through future support units rather than direct changes. For Elation MC, though, I don't know, man. At the beginning, I really thought they were going to be the next meta-defining unit, but that clearly didn't happen. The way their kit is designed just doesn't support that level of impact. At best, Elation MC is currently Evanescia's best in slot, and in other scenarios they act as a substitute option in Silverwolf teams for players who don't have Sparksy or Yaoguang. That's not bad, but it's far from impressive. As for Evanescia, she actually feels quite solid. She might not look flashy at first glance, but behind that simple kit is very high damage potential, especially once more tailored supports are released in the future. Looking at all 3 Elation units released in version 4.2, it really feels like Hoyoverse is trying to push players into building one dedicated Elation team. So realistically, you're choosing between building around Silverwolf or Evanescia, unless you're a full-on Leviathan who can afford everything. One major issue right now is the lack of a proper Elation sustain unit. That's probably why they buffed Huohua, but even then, I don't think it's enough with how hard enemies are hitting lately. So for now, all we can really do is wait. Because once that missing piece, that proper Elation support or sustain, finally arrives, I genuinely believe Elation teams will be able to rival or even surpass premium Remembrance teams. It's just a matter of time. So that's everything for today's video. Now I want to hear from you. Is V5 actually good, or is it just another disappointment? Did Hoyoverse cook this time, or did they completely fumble the patch? And more importantly, do you agree with my takes, or am I completely off the mark here? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading everything. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!